Hello and welcome to the Everyday Adventure Podcast. My name is Nikki Bass and I will be bringing you thoughts, ideas and stories from some incredible guests to hopefully inspire you to live more adventurously in your everyday lives. So today I am absolutely thrilled to be speaking to Megan Hine and welcoming her as the first guest for season 6 of the podcast. And I can't think of a more exciting, brilliant guest to start with, honestly. So to give you a little bit of background, if you've not come across Megan, and if you are in any way interested in the outdoors, in adventures in outdoor spaces, I'd be really surprised if you haven't. But a little bit of background. Megan is a survival consultant. She's an expedition leader and a producer. And over her vast career, she has gained a wealth of knowledge and expertise from leading hundreds of expeditions around the world, consulting for TV survival and adventure shows, and working and living with indigenous communities. And I first came across Megan just before I was due to leave the army. I think she just published her first book, Mind of a Survivor. So it's 2017. And this also coincided with me conducting my own research during my master's into resilience and adventure. So it was really wonderful timing just to sort of even just be aware of the work that she did. But also up until then, I think all of the sort of adventure and survival experts I'd come across in the media or even during my research had been men. And so to sort of see, it was just really incredible and very inspiring to see a woman who was thriving in this space, but also finding her own way in which to do her work and which to navigate it as well. So needless to say, I've been obviously following Megan for the last few years on social media. I'm sure she'll be delighted to hear I've been stalking her. But obviously I was absolutely thrilled when she agreed to come onto the podcast and speak to me for a chat. So Megan, welcome to the show. It is such a pleasure to have you here.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited to talk to you. Yeah, I can't believe it's like 2017 since Mind of a Survivor came out.
No, it's mad. I was looking back when I was like, wow. Because I guess I remember it so clearly because I think you might have been doing interviews on TV and that side of thing. And I remember it. I was like, God, where has the time gone? Literally. I mean, just to begin with, I think it's fair to say you've carved out a pretty unique career for yourself. And I know you've talked about this probably at length to people about sort of where the inspiration comes from and how you got started. But I guess be really interested to know not only where the background is to your career, how you got started, but also what sustains you. Because I can imagine, and also obviously from reading the book, know that it must be pretty intense at times. And I imagine sometimes you might be thinking, how do I keep doing this? So yeah, I'd be really interested to know, what keeps you going, what motivates you, and what keeps it being, I guess, new and challenging for you.
Yeah, and there's definitely really deep questions. What drives me and what keeps me going? In terms of what keeps me going, I've always had a real passion for discovering my own limits. I think early on in my career, because I started working as an outdoor instructor, guide and leader when I was 17, straight out of school. So I suppose my career's kind of grown from there. And when I first started, I was really into sort of my own climbing, mountain biking, and just started doing alpine mountaineering expeditions and things for myself at the time. For me personally, it was all about going as hard and fast and see what I could overcome personally. And then I discovered the outdoor industry, which I didn't know about when I was growing up. I didn't realize this was a career path that you could actually take. And I discovered the outdoor industry. So I was like, oh, brilliant. This is a great opportunity for me to do more climbing and spend lots of time outside doing the things that I love doing. And I started taking people out, and I was just getting so frustrated with how slow they went, how their agenda didn't match mine. And I just remember just being really frustrated with my clients and sort of with the situation. And then I was on an expedition out in Nepal I was leading with a group, and they wanted to stop and take photos, and I wanted to just keep pushing through. I think we were doing the Annapurna circuit, which is like a 30-day trek that goes around like the Annapurna Massif. And I just remember getting so frustrated. And then I just had this sort of moment of this is not about me. This is about my clients. Like, this expedition's got nothing to do with me. This is all about my clients. So from that moment on, I then kind of developed two personas within the outdoors. So there's my personal side, which I actually tend to keep pretty private, like sort of my own personal expeditions and trips and things. And then sort of the leader guide side, which that part of me absolutely loves accompanying people on expeditions and taking them out to pretty remote wilderness environments that are quite could be considered quite extreme or hostile at times. And seeing them overcome challenges and, just realize like how strong they really are. And that's incredible. Just going on somebody's journey like that is just amazing.
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the things that sort of struck me, I was rereading the book again a few days ago. And I think one of the things that you talked about was how when people are in quite extreme or in outdoors situations, how then they become more able, you've seen sort of time and time again, people more able to talk about their emotions or access that sort of part of themselves. And I guess it's interesting, isn't it? Because we often think of the rewards from doing those type of expeditions you're going as being purely physical and sort of accomplishment or achievement and that side of things. But I was really struck by this idea that actually we know that there is so much psychological reward, but also it's not necessarily just the extreme part of the journey that might trigger that. Actually purely just being in a different space or a different environment and almost taking on a different identity for people helps to release that as well.
Absolutely. I mean, you really see that. I think, you must see this in the work that you do as well, in the fact that, so much of our everyday lives, sort of when we're in the modern world, it's so easy to never take ownership of our actions. And it's very easy for, like, there's a real thing around like blame culture and passing on the blame and how nothing is our fault. We're currently seeing this in the media, and it's fascinating how in sort of the modern world and everyday life we don't often take responsibility for our actions. But when you're out in the wilderness, when you're out in these environments, you have to start taking ownership of your actions, because the consequences, if you don't, can be quite dire. So it's really empowering as well. So when you start stepping into that, and sort of one of the things to feel happy and content as human beings is to have an element of control over our environment, however small that might be. And when you're operating in these environments and you can start taking control of, even just kind of dressing yourself in the morning with the right layers, or, completing your, the tasks to meet your basic human needs, like gathering water and things, go such a long way to kind of rebalancing people's mental health. And I've had clients on expedition who've been on medications for anxiety and depression, and they've chosen to come off those medications. I don't advise this without talking to your doctor first, but they've chosen in those moments to come off of their medications, and they haven't needed them. And that is just incredible. And we haven't done enough research or studies really into the benefits or the therapeutic benefits of adventure and spending time in the outdoors.
Yeah, no, that's so true. I think it's really interesting because I noticed, particularly, I think it was over the sort of the lockdown, the COVID period, that there's started to be more research. I think also what tends to happen, particularly in research, is people it's stuck in particular silos. This is about this aspect of psychology, or this is about sports, or this is about extreme environments. And actually starting to see all of those different threads being brought together. And like you said, that I think people sort of viscerally felt it, because actually the only escape we had was getting, even if it was 5 minutes a day going down the road, and what a benefit that was. And I think then when you sort of magnify and translate it, I guess, into the expeditions that you do, I guess I was just wondering, because I know you've faced some pretty extreme challenges that probably the majority of people listening to this podcast haven't necessarily encountered as a sort of voluntary or sort of putting themselves out there. But I was just thinking about, I know from my own experiences, often the challenges that we face aren't necessarily the big ones that make a story, or that are, what people sort of readily think about when it comes to adventure. And I was just wondering, sort of over the course of your career, what are some of the challenges that you've really sort of wrestled with, whether it's in terms of, the work that you do, or in terms of your motivation and that side of things?
Yeah, I think it's, as you said, it's very easy. And you see like a lot of people on the kind of speaking circuit talking about, the big challenges that they've overcome on these trips. And it's actually like usually the culmination of everything, or like often like sort of if something's gone wrong, it's been like a snowball effect of little things that have kind of led up to the point where that incident has happened, and at times could have been prevented as well. For me, I think, so I started with the working within the outdoor industry. And then in my early 20s, I was leading a lot of expeditions to quite remote areas. I had amazing luck, I suppose, in who I got to work with and for, and the trips that I was doing. So I was working with, top mountain guides, jungle warfare specialists. I had these incredible mentors. And around that time, I kind of got involved in the TV world. Initially, I was invited along as a stunt rigger to rig stunts for the second season of Bear Grylls' Man vs. Wild shows. And then I stuck as part of his team from then on. So for the next kind of 12 years, I've been part of his team. And I think the past decade, I've been away sort of 10, 11 months of the year, and working in pretty high stress, very dynamic situations where I'm dealing with helicopters and boats and wildlife and all sorts of like crazy different moving parts. And the very nature of the job, because I've got, 20 people on the ground who have all got their own job to do, and they're there to do a job. So it's very different to guiding, and, being aware of where every single person is within the train, what their role is, what they need to be doing. The job's quite inherently stressful itself. Though I love that aspect, that dynamic side of it. I thrive in that. But what I really struggle with is politics and that side of things. And, the media industry at times can be quite notorious for that, and for kind of fostering these kind of environments. I just sort of was taking on more and more responsibility, and was away. I was just bouncing from one environment to the next with no time off at all, jet lag and all of that. And I ended up going to see my doctor, because I came off a job and I'd been on the job for 3 months in one location. And I came back and I didn't remember anything about this job. So I went to see my doctor, and she was like, "You're burning out, like you need to stop." So this was actually this was a few months before we went into full lockdown with COVID. So for me, like COVID was, but I probably wouldn't have stopped otherwise. But I think that that's something, when you see, on social media, you see people's lives and stuff, you don't necessarily see the stuff that's going on behind the scenes with that. And I think things like burnout come on so slowly, particularly if you're like a high achiever or pushing yourself all the time, or not used to talking about emotions and things. It's like burnout is very insidious. It kind of like creeps onto you and then suddenly you're like in this situation where you just can't really function anymore.
No, I think that's such an important point as well. I think, first of all, that we don't necessarily always know what's happening in, even with people that we don't see on social media, people we see on every day, we're very good at masking. And I think, certainly from the work I've done with high achievers, the better you are, or the more you tend to push yourself, generally the better you are at masking too. So it sort of comes in a bit of a double whammy as well. And I think that, I can imagine that thing that actually, if you are someone who thrives on that adrenaline and that intensity, and also, the clarity, I think, that you get when you're in those very focused situations.
Yeah, it's highly addictive as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it's like, you don't necessarily, and it's not, that's not necessarily a healthy thing, because it's all these moving things. But again, you don't realize, because, the outdoors and like adventure and climbing and things has never really been about chasing the adrenaline. Like in hindsight, maybe, but in the moment, it's about control. It's about finding balance in myself to be able to push through and overcome those things. So it's not, if I'm operating in a place of adrenaline all the time, that's not a very safe place, because adrenaline is obviously triggering like the fight, flight, freeze response and the stress response, and it's very hard to make any sort of logical decisions in that space. So it's then trying to bring yourself back down. But yeah, when you're sort of starting to burn out, and that adrenaline and the adrenal glands and everything aren't functioning properly, your body's just on a downward, and your mind are both on a downward spiral, and you don't necessarily notice that. And I think, when you're working in these environments and you're leading in high stress situations, whether that be adventure or expeditions or film shoots, or whether that's operating as a paramedic or military personnel as well, you have to keep a poker face as well, because you don't want to panic the people that are with you either, of like, I'm not really coping that well right now. And it's like, well, you can't be leading expeditions into the deep jungle if you're falling apart. People aren't going to put their trust in you when their lives matter. And it's like, in those situations, you have to be able to keep control of a team, particularly if you've got a team that are very inexperienced, so that you can ensure their safety and your own safety.
Yeah, I was just thinking you're probably holding a huge amount for all those people as well, emotionally and psychologically too, that you're having not only to manage their sort of physical safety, you're having to manage their psychological safety so that they're able to cope. And yeah, I mean, the fact that you have managed to sort of hold that and find a way through. I guess I was just wondering, having encountered that experience and almost being sort of forced by your body to stop and go, right, we need a break. Going forward, or having been through that, are there things that you found that allow you to find more of a balance within your work? Or, I guess part of it's being more conscious of that and the toll, but also, are there particular techniques that you found, or is it a constant work in progress?
It's definitely a work in progress, and I think it always will be. I think for anybody that's super driven or high achieving or just loves what they do, it's really hard to stop. Yeah,
it really is. Yeah,
it's so hard to stop, because there's always if you've got an open mind and you've got that kind of mindset of like everywhere there's opportunities, and if you're not fixated on just one single goal, there's all these incredible opportunities around you. And it's like, do I take that one or do I take that one? And then it's like you then end up, taking on too much and keeping going with that. And, and I, because I guess I've always really enjoyed pushing my limits and seeing what I'm capable of. It was quite eye-opening, I suppose, to see that at some point it is too much. So what I started doing, and I actually initially found this really, really difficult, was to take 10 minutes each day. So I always take a yoga mat with me on the film shoots that I'm doing. And, some nights we will be in hotels because we've got to recharge batteries and things. And in my hotel room, if I'm going to be there for more than a couple of nights, I unpack everything. So that I can feel a bit more settled, because I like a life on the road all the time, living out of bags is quite unsettling. So I'll unpack all of my stuff, put it into places. I'll sometimes even rearrange the room, definitely get rid of those little hotel shampoos and things, and try to make my own space. So it's like creating a safe space. And that's a huge thing. And then my yoga mat goes down on the floor, and that's another safe space that just for 10 minutes a day. And I found this incredibly difficult to start with, because the work that I do, it's like, from the moment I open my eyes in the morning, it's like either clients or executive producers or directors are demanding my attention and my time all the way through until I go to bed at night. And we have often got call times of 4 a.m. and haven't gone to bed till midnight. So taking those 10 minutes where nothing else is allowed on this mat but me, felt quite selfish to start with, but now it's become easier to actually build more of that time into my day. And I think this is important, if you've got children or stressful jobs or anything like that, we just don't give ourselves enough time. So those were the two things, sort of in creating those safe spaces. If I'm out in my hammock or a tent, again, I do the same thing. I go to bed sort of 10 minutes earlier and go through my sort of personal admin. So my tent or my hammock from in the jungle is a case of just going through all my personal admin, which kind of helps settle me down, which is like taking everything off, antifungal powder that goes everywhere between my toes, all the nooks and crannies, so you don't grow nasty yeast infections in places you don't want them. And just creating those moments and the kind of, I suppose, little bits of routine in a very unstructured lifestyle.
Yeah, I was just thinking as you're talking, apart from maybe the context in terms of what the work you're doing, but what you're saying around that sort of taking time for yourself and the guilt that's attached to that as well is so intensely relatable, I think, for anybody, and I think certainly by the time you've reached a certain age, that we end up having multiple pulls on our time and attention all of the time. And even like you said, taking that 10 minutes can feel like can feel really difficult, I think, and part of the narrative that goes on in your head about whether you should be doing this, can you justify it? You should be doing other things. All the shoulds creep out too, and I think it's really interesting because I think it can seem so simple, but actually making that a practice or a routine. And I know I'm just as guilty of going, oh no, I'll just go and put the washing in and it'll be fine, which is a very, very different level, by the way. But yeah, it's like it's those things about how you can always find a reason not to. But actually, like you said, how important I know when I do stop for those 10 or 15 minutes personally, that it's really valuable. But it's so hard.
So hard. It's like our lives are so overwhelming. Even if you're not working in the jungle being chased by goodness knows what, it's like, our everyday lives are so overwhelming. If you've got a family, even if you don't have family, there's so many social career moves, like there's so much going on all the time, the bills to pay, we're in an energy crisis at the moment. Fuel prices have gone up, travel's expensive, there's so many stresses. It's so easy to become super overwhelmed, and when we become overwhelmed and we just don't really function very well, it's very hard to make any sort of kind of decision from a logical standpoint, and we just end up running around like headless chickens, just trying to do lots of stuff and actually not fully achieving anything. And that's totally natural way to feel, but it's from actually stopping, even if it's just for those 10 minutes a day, that actually just helps put life back into perspective. And if you can take 10 minutes, leave your phone behind and go for a walk out in nature, that's even better.
Yeah, definitely. And yeah, I was just thinking that we also then berate ourselves for the fact that we can't make good decisions and that there's something wrong with us. So it's an ongoing spiral. But yeah, no, absolutely. I think, and going back to your connection, the point you make about nature as well, just somehow finding a way to lower our temperature, I think can be so important too. And I guess it sort of leads me on to my next question in a way, because I was thinking about, there are so many benefits I can imagine. We've talked about a few of them from the work that you do and the sort of the fulfillment that you get as well, and that your clients get and the people you work with. But I guess I was just wondering the unexpected benefits, in a way, the things that have come out and surprised you, either from working with clients or just from, like you said, your own adventures, the things that you've done for yourself. I mean, that's the thing that sort of caught you and go, I didn't expect that, or I didn't notice it at the time, but now I'm seeing that this has brought me something.
Yeah, connection, I think, is a big thing. I think, again, in this kind of modern world that we've created, it's very easy to become isolated. And very insular. Everything, you can do everything online, from your shopping to virtual meetings. We don't actually need to associate with anybody physically anymore, if we choose not to, or if our lives are dictated that way. And we are designed as herd animals. We're supposed to be operating in tribal structures, and so many of us just don't have that anymore. And I think these trips, whether it's a film crew coming together to do a job, or whether it's expedition clients coming on an expedition, that moments of them coming together. Like last year, I did a couple of expeditions through my own company. Again, before I kind of really fell into the TV world, I used to do a lot of private guiding and expeditions with my own clients, and I just put up a couple last year. And it was just so nice, like particularly coming out off the back of the pandemic, and having a group of, there was 10 that we went out to Mongolia on a horse riding trip across the steppes, kind of spending a lot of time living with the Kazakh people, the nomadic Kazakh people, the eagle hunters out there. And it was just incredible, like just seeing my clients and myself be like interacting together as a unit. And for those those 2 weeks that we were together, it was just incredible. And it just felt so nice off the back of, so much isolation for such a long period of time, to actually be able to socialize and, interact with each other. And I think these are benefits that we don't necessarily think so much about, because we've got so used to living in this way that we've forgotten that really underneath it, like, we need that connection, and we desperately need that connection.
Yeah, no, again, I think really, really important to just think about, I think, that the impact that lack of connection has as well, in terms of, I guess, that we don't notice that we're missing it necessarily. But then when you have those moments, when you do come together with people, and like you said, that it can be really small interactions as well. But, it doesn't have to, I often think tend to think about, connection, that needs to be something really deep, and, but it can be just having a chat with somebody, or it can be, like you said, meeting with a group of clients that you don't necessarily know at the beginning, and that you have the chance just to get to know and interact, even if it's about what you're eating or what, where you're going to, and that sort of thing. I think there's something about that tangible connection, I think that is so vital, and that we think we can replace with online, as we're doing. But and it is such a wonderful tool that we can use it, but that it doesn't replace it. And it's so fundamental, I think, to our mental health as well, and to our feeling being part of something as much as anything.
So I guess it's those interactions and how much it can mean to somebody else. Like, just you're smiling and saying hello to somebody as you pass, because we we often on the street just keep our heads down, and particularly, I don't know if it's a very British thing, just not interacting. And and just that, how much that can make somebody's day, because every single one of us has got crap going on in our lives that we'd rather not be dealing with, and you just don't know what somebody else is going through, and just a smile and saying hello costs nothing, but it can really make somebody's day. And just that, like, that initial spark of connection, which triggers dopamine and happiness vibes, which is that's a gift you're giving somebody, and it costs you nothing.
No, absolutely. And so I guess just on that note, if someone's listening to this and they think, I'd really like to get started on my own everyday adventures, even if it's not a huge expedition, but something that I just want to start that process of living my life more adventurously, what's the one piece of advice you would give them?
Get outside and just go and do it. Nature doesn't discriminate, doesn't care what gender, sex, race you are. Just get out there, start doing it. There's a whole industry of outdoor instructors, guides that will take you out and do the discipline that you're interested in doing, whether it's whitewater kayaking or hiking. They don't cost, they won't break the bank. It's not that expensive. If you've got yourself, you can do one-on-one, or take a group along and hire them, because that is investing into your safety and your future adventuring career. And safe doesn't mean boring either. I just want to clarify that, because I think people are like, safety, health and safety, boring, but it's not boring. You can go and have some amazing experiences.
No, I think that's pretty vital, actually. And like you said, it's interesting how they get conflated too. But amazing advice. Thank you so much, Megan. One of the things I just wanted to ask you as well was, I know you talked about your previous expeditions that you did last year and with your own clients. I was just wondering, what have you got coming next for this year? Is there anything, if people are thinking, actually, I'd really love to go on one of Megan's expeditions?
So I've actually got 2 expeditions. I'm doing the same, they're both in Mongolia. I'm doing the same one again, which is horse riding and spending time with the eagle hunters. And you can actually fly and hunt your own eagles, like golden eagles. These are
my goodness.
Yeah. And the other one is tracking snow leopards. And I've got a few spaces left on that one. So we're going to spend 2 weeks tracking snow leopards in the Altai Mountains, which is going to be insane.
Sounds absolutely incredible. I'm signing myself up too, sorry. Megan, thank you so much for your time today. I mean, honestly, I could keep asking you questions and chatting for hours. I'm conscious you've probably got other things you need to get on with too. But if people want to find out more about you, more about the book, more about the work that you do, where can they go?
So you find out more information at www.meganhine.com. That's HINE.com, or Instagram at Megan_Hine. I love interacting with you guys and seeing your adventures as well. So let me know what you're up to.
Brilliant. Thank you. And we'll pop all of those in the show notes as well, so you can go and find those. Thank you so much again for your time today, Megan. It's been an absolute pleasure to speak to you. And yeah, wishing you all the very best for the year ahead as well.
Thanks so much, and right back at you.
Brilliant. Thank you. Bye. So I really hope that you enjoyed that conversation with Megan. Genuinely, I had so many questions I could have asked. I could have kept talking for quite a long time. But yes, highly encourage you to go and seek her out on social media, go check out her website and find out more about the amazing work she's doing. So this week, the thing that really struck me in this conversation was the point around adventure maybe being the pause, that reframing rather than the activity itself. And I think this is particularly pertinent for anybody who loves adrenaline. And I think that applies whether it is on the hills or, doing something physical or in the workplace. Often we're stimulated by adrenaline and it's exciting and it gets us going and it motivates us. And I think that's fantastic. I think sometimes the problem is that we end up seeking that out permanently, and it can feel boring or it can feel challenging to sit with ourselves when we're not in that state of stimulation. And I thought that the point that Megan made about just when that is our comfort zone, when we are happy in that state and we are maybe less comfortable or find ourselves frustrated when we're not in a place where things aren't happening, then maybe it is worth checking in with ourselves and going, okay, what is it that I do to bring myself back down again? What is it that I do to recover? And I often use the analogy talking about sort of professional athletes here, that their recovery sessions are as important as the practice sessions in any sport that they do. And it's the same for us, that we all need recovery time. And I think that can sometimes be the harder part. So I would just take this moment to say that if that is something that you recognise in yourself, if you do acknowledge that actually you love the adrenaline and excitement, but maybe find it hard to stop and pause, it might be worth just experimenting with, is there a way that I can fit that into my life, knowing it is important to have those moments of quiet and calm as well. I found myself starting to take on slow yoga sessions. So I love Peloton. This isn't an advert, by the way, but it's definitely something I enjoy. And they have some wonderful yoga sessions on there. And I normally see yoga in the way I see any other sport, as something to go, harder and faster and twistier and all the rest of it. But, I was really quite achy this morning. And I happened to see a slow yoga session. I remember doing that a few years ago and what a difference it made, but also how hard I found it. And I was like, right, that's going to be my challenge today, is to do something slow. And do you know what? I have felt the benefits of it all day. And that's no word of a lie. I have all the aches and crunches and everything have sort of melted just that little bit. So yeah, this is my challenge to you this week, is maybe to try something a bit slower and see how you find it. So I hope you enjoyed that. Before I go today, I'd like to just give a massive shout out to two of my previous guests on the podcast, Sally Orange and Darren Edwards, both of whom are currently in marathon 6 out of 7 on their World Marathon Challenge. And even just saying that, I am in total awe of what they have achieved. Both of them are raising money for some fantastic charities. So encourage you to go and check them out on social media. But Sally and Darren, if you are listening, I am blown away by your efforts. It is absolutely incredible. Keep going. 1 marathon to go as I'm recording this. And I'm wishing you all the very best of luck for that. Otherwise, thank you so much for listening. If you would like to find out when the next episode is going to be dropping, what else we've got going on, please do follow me. I am on Resilience at Work on Instagram or Everyday Adventure Pod. You can also catch me on LinkedIn, Nikki Bass. You can find me on Facebook, Resilience at Work, or you can check out my website, www.resiliencework.co.uk. That's it for this week. I will be back probably in a couple of weeks now. I'm off for half term, so I will leave you with this episode, and I look forward to catching up with you again very soon. Take care. Bye.